One warning stopped a murder. One test proved a betrayal. By the time the poison turned to proof, a waitress had a target on her back, and a mafia boss had something to lose for the first time in 20 years. The night had begun with velvet and wine. Crystal chandeliers bathed the restaurant in gold, the piano notes flowing like smoke through a room of power-drunk laughter. Waiters moved with silent precision, placing dishes no one ever questioned. Elena was one of them. A black waitress folded into the background, invisible until someone needed more champagne. She had long ago learned to keep her head down. In this place, silence was survival. But silence shattered when she saw the dessert tray. A tiramisu, perfect to the eye, except for a faint shimmer dusted across its surface. Too fine to be sugar, too deliberate to be accident. Her breath caught. A spoon lay angled wrong as if touched and returned. At the head of the table sat Salvatore Russo, the man whose name was both respect and curse. His hand lifted the fork, muscles casual, eyes fixed on a joke only he understood. Elena's voice tore through the music. "Don't eat that." The room froze. The piano stuttered silent, forks clattered against plates. Dozens of faces turned toward her. Shock, disbelief, insult. Russo's fork hovered midair, his gaze narrowing on her. Around him, his guards bristled, hands slipping to weapons beneath their jackets. "What did you say?" His voice was soft, but the steel beneath it drew the air thin. Elena's throat tightened, yet the words escaped steady. "There's something in the dessert. Look at it." A heartbeat of silence. Then movement, measured, precise. Dr. Castellano, longtime physician of the Russo family, appeared at the table with his black bag. Without waiting for permission, he scraped the powder, dipped a swab, dropped it into a vial. The liquid bloomed dark, violent. Poison. The proof cracked the room louder than any gunshot. Russo leaned back slowly, his eyes sweeping the guests. "Who touched the tray?" Elena's hands trembled against her apron. She didn't need to answer. The truth revealed itself. Maria, draped in emerald silk, lips painted like blood, froze mid-sip. Her manicured fingers trembled, glass sliding from her hand to spill red across white linen. Gasps rippled. Russo's eyes didn't blink. "Maria!" Her face crumbled, excuses dying before they reached her tongue. She reached for him, but the guards closed in, wrenching her arms behind her back. Elena stood frozen in the aftermath, invisible no longer. The woman who had spoken out was now marked, by every guest's stare, by the truth hanging in the poisoned air. Russo rose, slow and deliberate. His eyes, cold as winter, fixed on Maria, then shifted briefly to Elena. "You should be dead," he murmured, then louder to his men. "Take her alive. We'll need her." The chandeliers still glowed. The piano still sat polished, but the night had changed, and Elena's warning had bound her to the most dangerous man in the city. The restaurant emptied like a theater after the curtain fell. Guests hurried into the storm, their silks and masks stained with panic and spilled wine. But Elena remained. She stood near the broken table, hands trembling against her apron. Every glance she caught on the way out wasn't gratitude. It was suspicion. She had spoken out, and in this world, speaking carried a price. Russo's shadow loomed as he lit a fresh cigar. The glow flared, catching the sharp cut of his cheekbones. "You saved me, ragazza," he said finally, voice low enough for only her. Smoke curled between them. "That makes you my responsibility now." Elena's chest tightened. Responsibility? In his mouth, the word didn't sound like protection. It sounded like chains. By dawn, Maria had been delivered to a private hospital wing under armed guard. She was alive, but barely. Russo insisted she be kept breathing. A dead traitor is useless. Alive, she talks. His tone held no pity, only strategy. Elena tried to slip back to her tiny apartment after her shift, hoping the nightmare would dissolve with sleep. But when she checked her apron, something waited for her in the pocket. A folded napkin. Her stomach dropped. With shaking fingers, she opened it. In bold scrawl, just 3 words. "We saw you." Her breath faltered. She crushed it into her palm, scanning the shadows of the empty street. Hours later, her phone buzzed. She unlocked it, praying for her sister's name on the screen. Instead, a photo appeared. Her, standing outside the restaurant, taken minutes earlier. Another followed, her unlocking her apartment door. Then a final message. Tick-tock. Elena's knees weakened. She almost called the police, but stopped herself. She could see the officer's face already, the smirk curling as he dismissed her. A black waitress claiming Mafia men stalked her? They'd laugh, or worse, file it away where the wrong person could find it. No one in authority believed her kind. She had learned that the hard way. The following night, Russo summoned his capos to the mansion. The long table glowed under chandeliers, but the air was heavy with tension. Elena was forced to stand at the far end, every eye on her like knives. "She's a liability," one of the older men sneered, gold rings flashing as he gestured. "She knows too much." "Better to cut her loose before someone else does it for us," another added. Elena's heart pounded, but she didn't flinch. She had been dismissed her whole life, by customers, by teachers, by strangers who never looked past her skin. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of fear. Then Russo raised his hand. The room fell silent. "You think she's weakness," he said, his voice calm, measured. "But weakness doesn't stop a murder. Weakness doesn't shout the truth when 100 liars laugh." His gaze swept across the men, sharp as glass. "She stands because she chose to. None of you did." The words hung heavy, echoing in the hush. No one argued. Elena's pulse hammered as Russo's eyes flicked to hers, unreadable but certain. For a moment, she almost believed she was safe. Then her phone buzzed in her pocket. Slowly, she pulled it out under the table. A new text glowed on the screen. "We know where you sleep." Her throat went dry, and she realized that whatever Russo promised, his world could not shield her from the one truth stalking her. She was already marked. Storms didn't always come with thunder. Sometimes they arrived in numbers printed in red ink. By the week's end, Russo's empire felt the tremor. Bank accounts frozen, shipments delayed, partners vanishing into silence. Somewhere inside his own walls, a hand was feeding information to the enemy. Elena stood quietly at the edge of his office as papers slammed onto the desk. The room was lined with leather and mahogany, but tonight it felt more like a cage. Russo leaned over the ledgers, jaw tight, cigar untouched. "Every empire falls from within," he muttered. She hesitated. "You'll find who did it." His gaze lifted, sharp as always, except this time the edge was dulled by something heavier. Weariness. For the first time since she had met him, he looked human. "You think I built this on trust?" he asked, voice low. "There is no trust, only leverage, only fear." But then his eyes lingered on her, just long enough for the silence to sting. "You," he admitted, almost bitterly, "are the only real thing left in this room." The words hit harder than the storm outside. Elena swallowed, unsure if he meant it or if it was another tactic, another way to tie her tighter to his world. But the loneliness behind it felt raw, unpolished, almost dangerous. Before she could answer, the door opened. 2 guards pushed a man inside, Vincent, the family's accountant. His tailored suit was wrinkled, his face pale, sweat glistening under the chandelier. Russo's gaze sharpened. "Why is it always the quiet ones?" Vincent stammered. "It's not what it looks like." Russo's fist slammed against the desk, rattling glass. "Then tell me what it looks like." No words came. Minutes later, they were in the warehouse. Steel beams overhead, shadows stretching long across the concrete floor. Rain leaked through broken panes, pooling around crates. Vincent knelt between two guards, wrists bound, eyes darting wild. Elena lingered near the doorway, heart hammering. She shouldn't be here. This wasn't her world. And yet, Russo hadn't sent her away. Russo circled Vincent slowly, his voice measured, calm in a way that made Elena's skin crawl. "You sold pieces of me for what? A promise? A handful of dollars? Or did you think they'd spare you when the dust settled?" Vincent's pleas echoed in the empty space, but Russo's eyes were already cold. Verdicts. A nod to his men, enough to silence the begging. Elena flinched as the guards dragged Vincent deeper into the dark. She didn't see what followed, but she heard the single sound that sealed it, the metallic crack that ended a life. When Russo returned, his coat dripped with rain, not remorse. His face was stone. Yet in the shadow of his eyes, Elena saw something flicker, a hollowness he would never admit. She held his gaze, refusing to look away. For the first time, he didn't mask it with rage or control. For the first time, he let the silence speak. Back in his office, a guard delivered a sealed envelope. Russo tore it open, scanning quickly. His jaw clenched. "They're planning their move," he said, voice iron once more. He looked at Elena, as if the words were meant only for her. "They're coming for the gala." The mansion had been scrubbed of shadows for the occasion. By nightfall, chandeliers burned so bright their crystal prisms scattered light across every marble pillar. Music swelled from a string quartet tucked into the corner, while laughter and champagne rose together in gilded harmony. Masks glittered on the faces of the city's elite, feathers, sequins, gold leaf hiding truths far uglier than their disguises. Elena stood at Russo's side, dressed in black silk that clung awkwardly to her frame. She wasn't meant for this world of diamonds and whispers, and the guests made sure she felt it. "Who is she?" one voice murmured behind a jeweled mask. "Not family," another hissed. "An outsider," a third concluded, the word dripping with dismissal. Elena kept her chin high, even as their stares pricked her skin. She was used to being invisible, but tonight invisibility wasn't an option. Tonight, every eye weighed her like an intruder. Russo's hand brushed hers, grounding her. "Ignore them," he muttered, his voice iron wrapped in velvet. "Only cowards whisper." But the whispers didn't matter. What mattered was the undercurrent. Elena could feel it, shadows sliding through the golden hall, movements too precise to be chance. Her gaze swept the crowd. And then she saw them. 3 men, masks barely concealing what she already recognized. The scarred jawline sharp under the glow, the flash of a gold tooth when one of them smirked, the trembling shoulders of the youngest, his hands fidgeting around his glass. They blended with the dancers, with the aristocrats. But Elena knew. Her blood chilled as the memory replayed. The whisper in the restaurant, the napkin in her pocket. They're here. The music swelled, violins cutting sharp. A waiter passed with a tray of champagne flutes, crystal catching the light. The scarred man lifted his glass. So did Goldtooth. So did the boy, though his hand shook. And then she heard it. The same words, a whisper slithering through the music. A toast. To Don Vito's last night breathing. Elena's breath caught. She gripped Russo's sleeve, her voice fierce but hushed. "It's them, the assassins." His eyes flicked once across the crowd, recognition sparking. He didn't move. He didn't need to. The danger was already clear. The glasses raised, and then gunfire split the gala apart. The first shot thundered toward Russo's chest. Elena moved before thought could catch her, seizing his arm, dragging him down. The bullet screamed past, shattering a crystal decanter behind them. Guests shrieked, masks flying, champagne spilling into chaos. Tables overturned, chairs crashed, chandeliers swayed as panic swallowed the room. The string quartet fled mid-note. boughs abandoned on the floor. Russo's men surged forward, weapons flashing from beneath tailored jackets. Muzzle fire burst in strobe-like flashes, smoke burning the air. The assassins scattered, Scar cutting through panicked dancers, Goldtooth forcing his way toward the exit, the boy faltering in terror. Elena pressed close to the marble floor, heart slamming as glass rained around her. Russo crouched beside her, one hand gripping her shoulder, steady even in the storm. His eyes burned with something between rage and astonishment. "You saved me again," he muttered. But there was no time to answer. The gunfire dulled for a moment, replaced by a new sound. Sirens. Wailing, sharp, growing closer with every second. Russo's men froze, eyes darting. His jaw tightened. Cigar snapped clean in his fist. "Someone tipped them off," he growled. Elena's pulse spiked. Because if the assassins hadn't finished the job, the law was about to descend. And in this world, salvation and damnation often arrived in the same uniform. The sirens faded only after the last of Russo's men hauled 2 masked assassins into the cellar below the mansion. Scarred jaw bleeding, gold tooth broken, they were dragged in chains like trophies of a war not yet won. But the boy, the trembling one, had slipped away into the night. Russo's empire was bleeding too. Word spread fast. Allies grew silent. Partners cut their lines. The gala meant to show dominance had exposed weakness. By morning, Russo stood over the city from his balcony, cigar unlit between his fingers. Elena lingered behind him, her gown torn, her hands still smelling of gunpowder and smoke. "You think they'll stop now?" she asked softly. His jaw flexed. "No, they'll come harder." For the first time since she had met him, the confidence in his tone wavered. Maria lay in a hospital bed, wrists restrained, emerald silk gone, eyes hollow. Russo entered with Elena a few paces behind. The monitors beeped softly, masking the venom in Maria's voice. "You let her stand beside you?" Maria's eyes cut to Elena. "A waitress? You made me nothing for someone who doesn't even belong in your world." Russo didn't answer. Maria's voice cracked into a bitter laugh. "Love is a fool's game. Power is the only truth in these walls. Ask yourself, Salvatore. What happens the day she costs you both?" Elena's stomach twisted. She wanted to speak, to deny it, but the words caught. Maria's spite carried too much truth. Russo turned away, his silence colder than fury. Later, in his study, the fire burned low. Elena stood across from him, arms folded tight. "Am I just another distraction?" Her voice broke, steadied again. "Something convenient until it costs you too much?" The room stilled. Russo's eyes rose to meet hers, and for once there was no mask, no armor of control, only a man cracked open by the weight of his own walls. "No," he said quietly, then stronger. "You're the only truth I have." The words hung heavier than any bullet. Elena felt them settle in her chest, both terrifying and undeniable. But the door opened, breaking the moment. The consigliere entered, gray hair slicked back, eyes sharp as ever. He bowed slightly, but his voice was iron. "Boss, the family is restless. They whisper already, about weakness, about distraction." His gaze slid to Elena before returning to Russo. "Love is weakness, and weakness will kill us all." Russo didn't reply. His silence was an admission, his stillness a storm caged. Elena felt the weight of his choice pressing closer with every breath. That night the mansion seemed quieter than ever. Guards moved like ghosts, the halls echoing with unease. Russo sat alone at the edge of his desk, head bowed over crumpled papers. Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, Elena stood in the doorway, watching the man who held an empire in one hand and her fragile truth in the other. And she knew the crossroads had arrived. Russo could not cling to both. Either the empire would consume him, or the truth would save him. The mansion didn't sleep after the gala. Guards lingered restless in the corridors, conversations hushed, trust stretched thinner with every shadow. Russo buried himself in maps and ledgers, fighting to plug holes faster than they opened. Elena drifted at the edges of his world, watching, waiting, knowing her presence was both anchor and wound. Days bled into weeks. Enemies struck at shipments. Partners vanished. Whispers spread that Russo was no longer untouchable. The Empire staggered, and so did the man holding it together. One morning, Elena was gone. No argument, no goodbye, just the absence of footsteps in the hall. On his desk, between the ledgers and half-burned cigars, lay an envelope with his name written in her careful hand. He opened it in silence. Salvatore, you once told me I was the only truth you had, but truth can't live caged inside an empire built on fear. If you come to me, come as yourself, not as the boss, not as the mask. Only then will I believe you chose me, not just the power I pulled you from. I'll be in Boston. If you want the truth, find me there. Elena Russo's hand lingered on the page long after the words blurred. For the first time in decades, no calculation, no strategy came to him. Only silence. Months passed. The empire reshaped itself with blood and smoke, but Russo was no longer the man he had been. In every deal, in every betrayal, Elena's absence echoed like a bell he could not silence. One night, as the consigliere droned through numbers, Russo set down his cigar and rose. He dismissed the room with a flick of his hand. At dawn, the private jet waited on the tarmac. No guards, no entourage. Only him. For the first time in 20 years he left the empire behind, if only for a flight. Elena walked alone through Boston's narrow streets, the air crisp, the sunrise washing the bricks in amber light. She held a shard of glass in her hand, broken from a wine goblet months ago, the night everything had begun. What once symbolized danger now felt like proof. She had survived it, reshaped it, carried her dignity through it. No longer invisible, no longer just a waitress dismissed by whispers. She paused at the corner, breath steady. For the first time, she wasn't looking over her shoulder. Somewhere above, the low hum of engines cut through the morning quiet, and though she didn't look up, a small, certain smile touched her lips. The storm had passed. The dawn had come. But the question lingered, one that every eye, every whisper, every heart would carry from this story. Would you have risked everything for a truth you overheard?